It started with what would Laura Roslin do, and now we're asking what would Sharon Raydor do. Welcome to a very special episode of the What Would Sharon Raydor Do podcast, where we talk with the woman that knows her best, Mary McDonnell, about Sharon's backstory, decision making, and her interactions with the team. Mary, do you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about this episode and why it's a special edition?
So, hi everybody. First of all, we miss you because we haven't done a podcast in how long, Chelsea? At least a month. That's a long time. And I miss talking to you and I miss watching what you say when we're done and sort of getting your new questions. This happened because we're all very clearly invested in this election. I mean, it clearly is. It is the most important election, certainly of my lifetime, perhaps of any of ours. You know, there's a lot of different ages here that are listening, but I kind of have a feeling that this is the one. There's kind of a reckoning occurring in our minds and our hearts. And I thought to myself, what would Sharon Raydor do about this moment? What would she do? And it occurred to me, because she's pretty smart, Sharon, through her life, through her daughter, through her awareness, and her son, is very, very interested in the millennial vote, either Republican or Democrat, and the millennial vote as a vote. And lately, one of the things that I've noticed is a the protest vote, or the person who says in the millennial voting group block, I'm not going to vote for either. And I'm curious about it, and I want to know more about it. I don't want to just reject it. I don't want to, at this point in my life, say, oh, well, that's ridiculous. Because I remember when I was the age of a millennial, and I remember that my values were very, very, very clear and very strong. And any time there was a gray area, it made me angry and it made me frustrated, and I rebelled. And okay, it's everybody who listens to this, and even the people who don't, know me well enough to know that I'm a Hillary Clinton fan. So I'm not going to, that it would be silly for me to hide that. And I would never do that. Every day she impresses me more. Even today, when I watched her press conference dealing with the resurgence of some new emails that we, first of all, have absolutely no information about. I watched her do a press conference where at the end of it, people were saying, but she didn't answer anything. And I said, what is she to answer to, my friends? There's nothing out there. Anyway, that's not really why we're here. We're here because I'm interested in hearing from my millennial friends as to the dilemma, the situation, how they feel about looking at these two 70-year-old, or 69 and 71 or whatever. I don't know what the Donald is, but we won't get into that. Anyway, these two very energetic, right, people of my generation. And I'm thinking about the millennials, and I'm thinking about, well, because it's a Sharon Raydor podcast, Sharon is thinking, what's going on here? Why would listen, believe me, I completely understand the value of Bernie Sanders. He is an extraordinary man. He's a great citizen. He's a great statesman. He has done so much. And I understand disappointment, believe me. I was a Hillary Clinton person when Obama took the job. Of course, I immediately devoted the rest of the time to Obama, and he's been a beautiful, amazing president. But my question is, why would anyone withhold the opportunity to vote, particularly when it's so clear to me that the choice between these two candidates, that Hillary Clinton is the only choice that allows for the progressive agenda to even live, let alone flourish, let alone move forward, let alone progress as it's supposed to. So I want to hear from my millennial friends. I have two guests here today, Maggie and Nachelle, and I'm going to ask them a few questions about all of this. Nachelle, do you want to start and sort of give me a little bit about how you're feeling? You know, you're in your 30s. Where are you with all this?
I'm an older millennial, so I remember the Clintons in the White House, and I remember how our society was just living in peace and prosperity. And I'm a little bit different because Hillary Clinton really made a difference in my life at a very young age. I remember seeing her when I was in third grade, and I remember she was doing an interview and she was talking, and she said, I could have just stayed home and baked cookies, but I decided to have a career instead. And I remember being young and not understanding, but feeling like, that's amazing. I've never seen a potential first lady ever speak that way and ever have a career outside of her husband's career. So that, in a way, has guided me throughout pretty much my whole life. So I'm a little bit different in that aspect. And even in '08, I was a Hillary, not Obama, and it went against my entire generation, was definitely Obama. So I was one of the rarities. So I've started to ask myself, especially the younger millennials, how they could not understand the importance of someone like Hillary Clinton, and how they have heard nonstop negativity and how they've allowed that to transform into their vote and their protest vote. So I ask myself almost daily, because my little sister's only 21 and she was a very large Bernie Sanders supporter, what is it that Hillary's not getting across? How are you not, even with Bernie Sanders coming out and endorsing Hillary in such a large way, it still doesn't seem to be enough.
Right.
And it's just, I ask myself that every day, like, what am I not doing to get across to these young voters?
Did she have an answer for you?
I think she's on board with Hillary, but she saw in Bernie Sanders someone who, in her mind, was outside of the realm and so different and so not afraid to speak out against the lobbyist and the big money. And as a younger millennial, she has no concept of the Gore W. Bush era and the Nader vote, and how that completely has transformed how we are as a country. So the younger millennials don't have a concept of that and don't know what the protest vote really can do.
Well, can you explain what you experienced during that? Because you're right. That was a turning point.
W. Bush and Gore had an election, and Ralph Nader kind of was the spoiler. Green vote. It got down to going to the Supreme Court and making a decision for the W. Bush v. Gore, and W. Bush obviously won. And because there was those protest votes, it could have made the difference with Gore, and it could have monumentally changed how we developed as a country. The W. Bush era, still, we're feeling the effects of that. And hugely. And foreign definitely, across the board, what we're trying to deal with. But I think they don't have an understanding of that, and they don't know what that means and how that monumentally changed, you know?
I also think that culturally, millennials, especially younger millennials, I too am 30 and a couple, and I remember the heartbreak of Nader and Gore, and how heartbreaking I was in college, and how heartbreaking it was to see Gore lose. We couldn't believe it, and it was just so heartbreaking. And those Ralph Nader voters that were our friends, we resented them. We were so mad at them.
Yeah.
So I remember that viscerally as well. But also, I feel like younger millennials, we live in a time when our celebrities are the people that we love, the people of that age are getting taken down. Bill Cosby. You know, or a bunch of people, Martha Stewart went to jail. All of our kind of, all of our figures that we kind of are these older people who we grew up learning to idolize, and we, one after another, we've seen behind the curtain, and we've seen, especially younger millennials, are so disillusioned and with the idea of like, oh, you're older, so you're supposed to be so great. Like,
I mean, I'm thinking of Bill Cosby just because of the Cosby Show and how important the Cosby Show was to culture and youth, and seeing a Black American family, an affluent Black American family, was, I think, incredibly important and influential on the culture. And then to see him be a criminal was very disappointing. So there's a cynicism that I think younger millennials are battling against.
I really agree.
There's a real cynicism. And so it's hard to buy that Hillary Clinton really is just somebody who grew up in hardship and is doing her best to make things better. It's hard for younger millennials to buy it. But as somebody who read some of these emails that have leaked, the emails reveal, I think, if you actually put the time into it, the emails reveal an incredibly caring boss. As somebody, I'm a millennial friend, but I'm also your assistant. And as somebody who works under a powerful woman, it's inspiring to see those emails and see a woman in power and see a woman compassionately and with authority direct the course of her career. That's what's happening in those emails.
Right.
Is she's hired the smartest people who are trying to do the best that they can. Yeah. And that's and she gives them the respect and space to do their work. Right. And that's what that shows. So it's hard. There's a cynicism I think young millennials are battling against.
I want to go to that, Maggie,
please,
for a second. I want to talk about that because I have a 28-year-old who has been on board with Hillary the entire time, given what she's experienced, and a 22-year-old son who was a Bernie Sanders all the way, who is now voting for Hillary Clinton. But I was very, very interested in his devotion to Bernie, and a great deal of what he talked about came out of exactly what you're saying, which was, my son was in, I don't know what, third grade when September 11th happened. And he came home from elementary school saying somebody told him that America was being attacked and we were going to war. And then, so every single thing that sort of we grew up comfortably feeling inspired by and surrounded by and comforted by and freed by and allowed by, they have had chipped away at them. So you're bringing up the idea of the pop culture part of it, not Bill Clinton. It's so funny, Bill Cosby, Bill Clinton, whatever. Here's the other thing. Hillary Clinton is this woman in a sea of men who've done bad things with their sexuality. Let's talk about it.
Right.
And then bringing in Bill Cosby on top of that. It's like it's been this culture of misdemeanors, by these gentlemen who have, now it's landing on her. So I look at that and I think, well, really and truly what we have here is some kind of war between the last bastion, the last stronghold, the last gasp of the patriarchy, as they see the feminine finally emerging and just about to be in the most powerful position in the land. The feminine is emerging and they're panicking. I think that's it. I absolutely think, I think that that's part of why Comey decided to release these, because it's about his reputation. He's worried about how he will be perceived. So another question came up about some emails, and because he got so much flack last time, it's sort of like, I need you to perceive me. Right. Everyone's panicking. The men are panicking. And it isn't just the men. The idea of the patriarchy, which has clearly been crumbling for a while. But so younger millennials have grown up almost always in some sort of state of crumble. And and Bernie obviously appealed to the disillusionment of that choice. But my concern is, at this juncture, all of these beautiful, vibrant, intelligent, compassionate people who are smart enough to feel cynicism. I mean, cynicism comes from smarts. It doesn't come from ignorance, right? Are giving up their right to create a platform that is in fact trustworthy. It's so interesting that untrustworthiness would be this issue because Hillary Clinton is offering the millennials the potential for a bottom line platform they can trust to begin to build outward. There's no doubt in my mind that that is true, but that cannot be perceived by some, and I'm wondering why.
I think the biggest thing is that she's had so many years of when they've been growing up, of you can't trust her, and they've heard their parents say it, or they've heard their aunt say it, or their grandparents say it, and they just hear it over and over and over. And you have the 24-hour news cycle, and you can go and you can Google things, and you can read blogs that aren't verified blogs. And when you hear something over and over and over again, you start to believe it.
Sure.
So
Right.
then they don't. And during the primaries, Bernie and her didn't have the best relationship, and things turned nasty policy-wise. So there is still this bitterness of not their man lost, so there's still that underlying bitterness that they just can't get over. Right. And they can't understand, why should we trust her now, when he was saying, you know, she's untrustworthy during the primary. So they're asking themselves these questions. My biggest thing to me is, I don't care who you are as an American citizen, at some point your ancestors fought for your right to vote. Whether you're a white male, your ancestors moved here and came here for freedom of democracy and the right to vote. If you're African American, your ancestors fought. If you're a woman, your ancestors fought. It's just like throwing away your vote is just mind-boggling to me.
I agree. It's mind-boggling to me, too, because there is literally no loss. It costs you nothing to do it. And the opposite of voting isn't not voting. The opposite of voting is like, I don't know, watching American Idol. You know, like it's a different, you must vote. It costs you nothing, and you are participating in your life. I mean, the phrase that in your life, and also the country's life and the lives of your peers, in a meaningful way that's more meaningful than what you post on Twitter or Facebook, even though that you get likes on that, and you're not going to get a like on your vote. No one's going to uptick you. No one's going to know. You just do it.
Unless you take a picture of your ballot and tweet it.
Right. Well, in some states you can't do that, though. You can't. Not in all states you can do that. It's illegal in some states. Yeah.
And it's just for you. You just do it for you, alone in the booth with you and your conscious.
Well, here's the thing, too, is like, when I hear, well, I don't like either candidate, so I think, well, I don't care if you don't like either candidate. Your
you got to make a decision.
Responsibility is to go deep enough with your intelligence and your ability to read and your ability to think and listen to figure out who is going to create the better possibility for your grandchildren. Now, that's a hard thing to say to millennials.
Yeah.
Because they're not there. But the point is, the world is accelerating at such a pace. And, you know, I'm going to say millennials, but that's where I'm fascinated. It's like, why? There is a point, and I think this happened to us. When I was in my 20s, we went through the Vietnam War, and I know that we are in many places around the globe right now, and there's extraordinary tragedy, and the military is having to give up their lives for so many different situations. But there was something about that war that took us from being, at that age in my 20s, from being idealistic and demanding idealistic endgames to life is so short, the planet is so valuable. I remember bartending in a bar in upstate New York, and a great deal of the patrons were returning vets, and it was so sad. and they were older than me and so much wiser than I was. And I just feel like something happened to us that pushed us further in that moment. And I'm not saying that we then created a very successful couple of decades, but this is different. There is a different feeling of resistance to the only progressive choice out there by the progressive young people. I've never seen anything quite like it. And to me, there's a mystery in it too. I understand, believe me, I understand the resistance to Hillary Clinton among people my age, because there are a great deal of men and women who are so terrified of the feminine that, as Rachel Maddow said, I think, today or tonight, their hair is on fire.
Yeah,
I mean,
completely.
really, truly. It's like, it is the most threatening concept,
Yeah.
and whether it's conscious or not. But when I think about younger people who haven't really, maybe that's why, they really haven't necessarily, and I don't want to say that's the thing. I'm trying not to make the millennials this thing, because I've been so inspired by millennials. But what might I ask is going to happen if you do not vote and Donald Trump is elected President of the United States? That is a tragic concept for the future of the planet. What will a 20 or 30 something do later on, as they're living in the consequences of that choice with their own mind and heart, when they realize they didn't vote?
Yeah.
That, to me,
Completely.
is the most haunting idea
Yeah,
of all.
completely.
Yeah.
It's so, okay, life goes on, you vote, you don't vote, whatever. You do live with the consequences of inaction your entire life. I've been around a long time, and I would say that the inactive moments haunt me more than the actions where I made a mistake. So that scares me a little for these young people.
Going back to your point about Ralph Nader, I see friends of mine on my Facebook feed saying, don't vote third party.
Right.
I did that. I made that mistake.
Right.
That was my first vote. I
Right.
was an idealistic 18-year-old and I voted for Ralph Nader, and boy, do I regret it. And I'm seeing people, older millennials, people our age, kind of saying that and regretting that. And it is a regret. I mean, it's a major regret that my friends who voted for Ralph Nader live with and talk about and experience in a real way, of the regret of being part of what led to George W.
Right. And the biggest thing that I try to get across as much as I can is, let's get Hillary Clinton in office, because Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren will hold her
goodness.
so accountable
Yeah.
for this progressive agenda.
Yep.
And then, you know what? Do what Senator Sanders is asking you to do and show up to your local city councils.
Right.
Fight for the Congress who represent you in your communities, because that's, by the time something reaches a federal level and federal attention,
Yes.
it's too late.
Yeah.
Right.
And you've lost your voice in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. So
Right.
get active. If you want a third party, let's build a third party, and
Right.
let's be very progressive, but let's do it in the midterms. Let's see how she does, and let's trust her and trust Senator Sanders and someone like Senator Warren
Yeah.
to call her out and say, listen, we've got to have this progressive agenda. And they both have made it very clear that they are going to hold her very accountable and very aware. And the other great thing is that if Democrats in general take back the Senate, Senator Sanders will be one of the most powerful senators in the Senate. And people
Right.
need to have an understanding of, he's going to oversee a lot of committees and have a lot of power to change our country for the good and for the better. So voting for Hillary, in a way, is voting for Senator Sanders to come back into this huge arena, and a national, the movement can continue and we can move forward as a country.
Have you ever heard of Think Global, Act Local?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly, right?
Exactly.
It's like, and Trump is a brand. Mm-hmm. Trump is a brand. And so it feels, he has brought down the integrity of the election Totally. But Hillary Clinton's not a brand. Hillary Clinton's an actual policymaker and person who has had a public service life in public service. And she's not a brand, and she is actually a professional person.
Like a policy wonk.
A policy
like,
wonk. Yeah.
As boring as that is for many to understand, like she has real policies and real ideas on how to move our country forward. I mean, it's just pretty amazing if you go onto her website, all of these policies about our college education and how to make college debt free, and about, because as of right now, as a country, college loans are the only loans you cannot refinance. And she wants to fight to say, excuse me, we should be able to refinance those loans the same way you can refinance your mortgage, your car payment. And after 10 to 20, your debt is forgiven. You pay, we shouldn't be still paying our debt. And she has ideas and plans that are hand in hand with what Senator Sanders wanted. So that progressive agenda is there to move us forward, because the country's got to move forward. We can't go back.
Yeah, I feel like we're not great millennial samples, Mary.
No, well, the
I know.
thing is, you know what? What is a millennial sample? I mean, that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That is the great
I
thing
hope
about
we're not
millennials.
disappointing you in terms of giving you the millennial perspective.
Right.
No, not at all. I mean, yeah, it would be great if we had some 22-year-olds in here.
Yeah.
But we don't at the moment. You know, to me, it's just, I keep thinking when I'm listening to the two of you, I keep thinking of people that tweet me or whatever, who completely cannot accept anything that is being heard here. Although maybe they will hear this, who knows? And I can't discount them.
Yeah.
I can't say that they're wrong. I can't do that to anyone, really. Well, I could do it to a few people, but I'm not going to do that tonight. But I can only wish to appeal to everyone, I guess, to vote. To vote. Don't sit this one out. Whatever your vote is at this point. If you sit this one out, you will just so deeply regret it. There's something...
Yeah, completely.
You know, and I can't, I have to say this. The thing that I feel I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. It's not about the millennials. It's not necessarily about the election, except it's everything about America. And it's very dear to my heart, upsetting to my heart at the moment. But again, I'm looking at all of these millennial Native Americans on the front line of the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. And I don't want to talk about the politics of oil or any of that right now. I'm just saying, isn't this an incredible thing to look at? Is that while we are approaching the most important election in America maybe ever on some level, because our future is precarious, at that very same moment, the youth, the Native American youth, are putting their hearts and minds on the line to try and support this world, this country, this land, and that there is which Hillary Clinton knows, Barack Obama knows, people know, we all know that eventually this must be dealt with. The Native American situation is a travesty. And broken treaties and bad policy, we cannot condone any more of this. And so it's fascinating to me to see these two things emerging simultaneously. And for me, it makes it even clearer. It makes it even clearer that every single American needs to vote. The country, the root of the country is being protected by the most vulnerable. What is that about? We need leadership in there at the moment that will acknowledge the most vulnerable. I don't think there's any question progressively that Hillary is the choice for that. So perhaps the whole thing in the next, how many days do we have? 9? 11? See, I just want it over with. I'm pushing.
Me
How many
too.
days do we have? 3? Oh, no. Got to think bigger. We have to think bigger before we vote. Or don't vote. We must vote.
The pipeline, I think, is a perfect example of think global, act local. I mean, the UN has said,
Right.
has gotten involved. What these young Native American people are doing is the most local thing possible. It's their tiny little pocket of land that they've been allowed. I'm allowed as in air quotes if you can't hear it. And so they're acting extremely locally, and it's having this large impact.
Completely. And the amount of how brave they are.
Yeah,
It's
inspiring.
There is no real media coverage that's happening there. There's no,
Lawrence O'Donnell.
I mean, I know.
Every night. Love
But
the guy.
I mean, it should, at this point, I feel it should be on MSNBC. It should be on CNN. We
on
should be outraged as a country that we still have these same problems, and it's not going away. And it's like we're grabbing at the
Still
scab.
talking about emails.
Right. We're still grabbing at the scab and wondering, why isn't it healing? Why,
that's what's so incredible about this moment. Why isn't it? Why aren't we dealing with it? Because we have never really
Ever
dealt
dealt.
with the shame
No.
of the foundation of this patriarchy. So as the patriarchy is being threatened by the feminine, this original blight is being exposed in a way that we haven't seen in 100 years, or it hasn't been brought to our attention.
Right. And I do understand how that could be scary for people. That's what's happening too, is I don't want to take away from people who are really angry right now and are scared and they're living in fear, because
Yes.
their feelings are real.
Yep.
And we're trying to acknowledge their feelings and trying to listen. I think we need to get, as a country, we have to get back to where we don't just say, you're Democrat, so you're wrong, and you're Republican, so I'm right, and vice versa.
Right.
We have to get back to that space in the middle, the
Right.
place where we can compromise and we can talk to one another. I feel like we've stopped talking to each other as a country once we find out who we're voting for, who we're not, who we believe in and who we don't. We have to get back to that core so that we can solve these problems that we have as a country.
You know who's traditionally really good at talking? Women.
Right.
Pretty much,
Right.
in terms of bringing people together. Hill's got that law lock. Hill's
The
great at
HRC
that.
does, yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's
No.
scary to some people in the same token. It's scary because when you look at Hillary's history with our country, she's accomplished a lot. And she's everything she's set out to do, she's pretty much done. When she couldn't get health care passed in the 90s, she's like, you know what, I'm going to get health care for children to have insurance. That's the first time I ever had insurance in my entire life, was because of her.
Yep.
Wow.
And it's just, I mean,
Yep.
it's just, and that scares a lot of people, because they know if she is blessed to get into office, she's going to get things done. And that's scary. It's scary to move forward as a country. It always is for us.
Isn't that interesting? Humanity is afraid to grow.
Completely.
There's something in our genetic makeup as humans on this particular planet that resists growth. And it's never been so clear to me as this, because it would seem so obvious.
What's the rule? There's some scientific platitude of like an object in rest stays in rest, an object in motion stays in motion. Like the law of, not entropy, something else. Anyway, that's all right.
No. So let's kind of tie things up here, or open things up to the next 11 days. I want to say to all of our listeners, first of all, thank you for letting us just go on and on. We're just sitting here, a bunch of women. We really are a bunch of chicks sitting around talking. And so thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for being there for it, because we have a lot to do together. The other thing I want to say is, I don't know, I know obviously this is a really Hillary-centric room. There are some of you out there who I know for a fact, because I'm on Twitter with you, who are still struggling with that and may not ultimately vote for Hillary. I just don't want anymore that to be a division. It's kind of what you're saying, Nachelle. I have to go back to the Dalai Lama again and again and again. This is a man who was ousted from his own country, had to flee in the night when he was like 18 years old. He is living in Tibet, out of Tibet. He's living in India, and he has had people leave. He's had hundreds of people leave his Sangha. He has had many Buddhists angry with him because he refuses to make the Chinese the other. There is something so extraordinary about that. I'm deeply, deeply, deeply taken with the concept of all of us dropping this fight. I may disagree with your vote. You may disagree with my vote. But I will admire you for the rest of my life if you do vote. And that's really what's in my heart. We need to get out there and vote. We own this privilege. This country is amazing. I've been here a long time. I've been alive for a long time. I've seen such wonderful things. I've seen horrible things. You got to fight for this country. Please, please know that no matter how you vote, you've done the right thing in voting. I think that's really what I feel at the core of everything. It's a beautiful thing to have a choice. And we don't want our choice threatened. And you know what? Countries lose their democracies when people stop participating in them. And that frightens me to my very core. So please, please, please vote. Anyone else you want to say goodbye, ladies?
This has been amazing.
been great.
So I loved it. And please show up and have your voice heard. That's how your voice is heard in our country, is your vote. And just own it and be proud. Whomever you vote for, be proud that you showed up and you voted. That's all I got to say.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As somebody who's having a hard time being compassionate and feeling oneness with the rest of my country. Oh my gosh, that just started to make me cry saying that out loud. But yeah, I am. How do I get there? How do I get to where you are of just go out and vote? Whoever you vote for. I want to hear you. I want to hear your voice. Because I'm not there.
Well, no, I understand that. I'm not there all the time either, but I would say that for me, the most important thing to working on becoming more part of the world completely is always, always, always question your ego. Always question your ego. That, again, I hate to come back to the head of the FBI, but I have to say, Director Comey, you got to question your ego at these really important moments and figure out if your vote is really for mankind, your thoughts, your perceptions of people. Like, why do we have such horrible feelings about Republicans if we're Democrats or Democrats if we're Republicans? That's really a hideous way to live. It really is. I've known some phenomenal Republicans. I've known some pretty lazy-ass Democrats. There's human beings out there. And we're all vulnerable to missing the point. So, to me, it's like constantly, and that's, again, back to my hero, the Dalai Lama, is question the ego at every turn and see what you come up with. If you decide to say, that might be my ego, resisting compassion for these people that
Feel differently than you do. I do. Feel differently than I do.
Yeah. And also, I spent years on the spaceship, Battlestar Galactica. And I did. And so when you're facing Cylons and you have to eventually realize that Cylons are you've gone through a huge breakdown in your ego. No, but I mean, honestly, I live in a fantasy world. I'm an actress. I haven't stopped acting since I was 40. So I guess my answer, or since I was 20. I guess my answer to your question would depend on what role I was playing. No, Anyway, so I want to thank our dear, dear Chelsea, as always, for making What Would Sharon Raydor Do happen every time, and for being willing to come in and do this special, special broadcast. Good luck on voting day. It's 11 days away, and I trust that all of us on our great group of Twitter people and Facebook people, I do trust will vote. So go out and tell a friend who's not voting to come with you. Do something like that. It'll be great. It'll be exciting. I think, and we'll see you. We won't see you again for a while unless we get another spontaneous brainstorm, and then we will do another podcast. But if we don't, we'll see you again when the show starts running, which is, I don't know when that is. When is it? January. I don't know the date yet. And hopefully we will get our pickup soon. Yes, TNT, I hope you're listening. And let's sign off. Here we go with our sign off, everybody. We love you. And keep love in your heart, no matter who you vote for. This podcast was brought to you in part by MajorCrimesTV.net.